Well, we're going to figure out if this is all going to work in a moment, aren't we? That's the hope at any rate. There we go. That's what we wanted. So a little bit of anything to make sure that this is going to work. We're going to check on that. What we're going to do is we're going to turn that off because that will hopefully kill off a bit of that as well. We're going to click this button here. Because then what that should do, power, the power. Now we just need to see whether this is working on the stream. This is the joy of technology, I think, because there's a little bit of a delay on there is much more of a delay using this setup I've got at the moment for bits and pieces, but it does appear to be working, which is what we want. What we will do very, very quickly, because I need to appreciate that this is going to be very, very different, and our guest is already waiting to join, which is kind of what we're after. What we're going to do is we're going to hit some buttons on my phone, because the big issue I have here is I have to look at the chat on my phone rather than being able to look at it anywhere else. It's an experiment. We'll see if it works, I think is the short answer. But either way, we will get going quickly just so that our guest can kind of get on, and let's see if this works. Guys, gals, and the gender fluid and all beyond the binary, it is Wednesday night, it is 8 p.m. and welcome back once again to the BOTW What's Current stream. My name is Anthony Russell, here once again to take you through the weird, wonderful and wacky world of the National Ice Hockey League structure. Here in Great Britain, we focus on the National Division. That is our bread and butter. That is our home port. But of course, we're here to bring you through absolutely anything from across the NIHL. That means the National Division as well as Division 1 and Division 2 in the north and in the south. Hello. Right. Before we get going too far into this, if you're watching, share the stream, do the usual bits and pieces. Some of you may have seen the tests that were going on yesterday. Some of it worked, some of it didn't. But what we are going to do before we do the bits and pieces, of course, you are watching us live on YouTube as we are, and we're just using a slightly different tech setup tonight, just because we have a guest who's going to join us momentarily. Usual bits of housekeeping before we start, which is bannersonthewall.wordpress.com, your number one source for all things related to the NIHL. You can check out our last piece on the last game I went to, which of course is our Banners on the Road series. That means you get the long form, in-depth look at the last game I went to, which of course I was commentating on last Sunday alongside the fantastic Joe Scutts, Berkshire Bees, and the Berkshire Bees, the Berkshire Bees and the Solway Sharks. I'll get the words out of my mouth. Massive fun, utter gunfight, 6-5. We'll talk about that a bit more in a minute. And of course, you've got the back catalogue of all the games that I've done recently, as well as our Hockey Story series, long form, in-depth pieces of content from across the breadth and depth of world hockey, from the 19th century to the present day, behind the Iron Curtain, into war and beyond. Of course, you can check out the last piece that we did, which was a chat with Jamie Thompson from Scotland, from Scottish Ice Hockey, about the state of things up north. Now, we are going to be really brave, ladies and gentlemen, because the other thing you need to remember is that we are live on YouTube every Wednesday night, which of course, especially tonight, as we've got a guest over on that side, I think it's that side, is the chat. Questions, comments, thoughts, feelings, anything you want to get out, please do stick it in the chat. We are keeping tabs on it. All we'll say is that if you are going to join in the chat, please remember the golden rule here at BOTW. That is DBAD. Don't be a dick. Be respectful of other people's thoughts and feelings, and we are going to have an absolutely wonderful time. We're just going to check what is going on the feed as well, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to be very, very brave. I'm going to press some buttons, and we are going to see whether our guest is able to join us, and hopefully it won't absolutely I have a feeling it's going to absolutely slow everything down to the nth degree. There we go.
Yeah.
He's hopefully coming in. Well, there you go. There's hopefully going to be a picture of him. There he is. There he is, ladies and gentlemen, from the Macca's Talk Hockey Podcast, where along with his occasionally with his brother Charlie, but also as well with fantastic Dan Connors, they chat their way through the NHL National Division. He also does a bunch of stuff for the Swindon Wildcats, and probably because he works for the Wildcats, probably does some stuff for Leeds as well, because that's how that works. But joined by Jack McCarthy from inside the Macca's Talk Hockey headquarters. Jack, if this breaks, I'm blaming the government or Donald Trump or something else, but hopefully we are coming through loud and clear at your end.
Yeah, I'm just got the stream on. I think it's on you, and then it will switch to me. I'm not sure if you can split the screen up. So
we'll figure this out. We'll figure it out momentarily, just because the stream is about a minute behind. Okay. I think, as well as how it comes. So if it chops and changes between us, we will figure that out, because this is the bit that I am weakest at. So I'm not 100% certain how we will figure that one out, but we'll guess it as we go. What I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can change that to a tile, see if I can do that to a different format, and see if it will hopefully come up for me. It's probably not going to work. However, that is the joy of trying things on the fly, and that is the joy of the What's Current stream, is that we do everything off the hoof, on the cuff, and it doesn't matter. If it breaks, it breaks. And
I think if you
and that's what we like to do.
3 dots, click change layout, and then it might be able to put both of us on. That's what I'm going to guess anyways.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for as well, because the it says it's tile, but it's still swapping between the two of us, but we'll figure that one out as it goes. It's not doing anything. Nah, that's not going to do anything of that nature, is it? I've got it for tiled. It doesn't seem to want to do that, and it swaps between the two of us. So we'll just have to try really desperately not to talk over each other. Either way, how are things in your world? Obviously, your latest piece with your latest episode with Dan came out this afternoon. So we will jump straight into the big bit that we do need to talk about, of course, which was they finally did it. Mm-hmm. Leeds finally got themselves over the hump, and the Leeds Knights have finally secured the NHL National Division Cup. Obviously, a large chat that you had with Dan about that, but they got there finally, Jack. Yeah. Congratulations to Ryan Aldrich and Kieran Brown on the roster. They did it the hard way, but they got there.
Yeah, I think they had to win it. They had to. I think if they'd have lost that one, I think just serious questions in terms of why can they just not get this one over the line, but they can get every single other trophy. So I think they needed this one, and I actually think now they've won this one, this could possibly give them a spark to even go and win the treble. Because I think this is the first trophy you can win in a season. So actually, they've got that trophy, and there's still 2 more up for grabs. So it might even give them a bit more motivation, because they've never actually been in this position where they've won the first trophy of the season. So they did it the hard way, but a 1-goal lead can be blitzed in a minute, and that was the case on Sunday, obviously, with Matt Barron getting the goal in 2 minutes, and suddenly it's all square again.
And unfortunately for the Raiders, a case of history repeating themselves, just like the 2023 playoff final. Leeds came into that final. Romford were arguably the better team for the second 55 minutes of that playoff final, but let themselves down early on. They go to Leeds, they let themselves down early on again, and it was just too big of a mountain to climb at the end.
Yeah, I think Leeds, Ryan said it in his interview after, they had to have a strong start and just play the way that Leeds can play. And oh my goodness, they just come in waves and waves. I watched the highlights. Just Kieran Brown, when he wants to, he can flick a switch and he can just play by himself. And he got a really big solo goal to get the lead. And from there, Leeds kind of cruise. And I did hear from a lot of people that was the loudest the Castle has ever been. And when there's 2,200 fans chanting on, screaming on, but I can imagine that gives them goosebumps and just that extra gear to go up, which maybe they didn't have on the Saturday as well.
I should just say, just having looked from a couple of seconds ago, 1948 of the first period gone in Peterborough, a third goal for the Phantoms. They're already 3-0 up on Telford. We'll touch on that in a little bit when we have a quick look at the rest of the National Division. But we do have to say a quick word for Romford as well, because I was on daddy daycare duty most of Saturday. The wife was out doing bits and pieces, but she was back in time for me to sit down. And when you consider how crazy last summer was for Romford, and yes, since they made the cup final, their form has been as up and down as a mountain stage of the Tour de France. But a massive, massive statement for Romford as a club to rebound from that situation where we weren't sure they were even going to make the start line of either the National Division or Division 1 with the Buccaneers. A bitter pill to swallow to lose another final to Leeds, but there's something to be said for just the resiliency of the club, the people around it, that they even got themselves into this position. It's a chapter point, not a failing in some ways.
Yeah, I think they probably had the toughest run to get to that, obviously going through Milton Keynes. The amount of comebacks they made in those cup games, because obviously it was only the first 10 games against each other. The amount of comebacks they made, the one against Swindon, where 57 minutes they were 2-0 down, suddenly they've won in overtime. And it's like, those are the kind of stuff where Romford doesn't give up. They will go to that final buzzer. And I can imagine, I didn't watch the game, but I can imagine on Sunday they gave it absolutely everything. And I think part of Romford is having those players who know what it's like to play for your local team, and they just give it that extra. And you saw in the semi-final against MK, they've probably written off after they went 3-0 down, but TJ Anderson and Sylvester, who were both from Romford, that Romford area, were the guys who stepped up. So I just think they have that special Romford DNA in them, and fair play for Lasham for recruiting the two imports. I don't think he could have done much better than that, to be fair. They've been lights out this season.
Yeah. Just having a quick look as well, because the social media scoreboard Supreme Andrew Days chucked in some Elite League scores. Glasgow and Manchester tied at 1 at the end of the first. Mitchell Hurd for the Clan, Tyler Hynam for the Storm. I quite like Tyler Hynam, but he seems to be injured almost every other time I seem to see them play. Steelers 1-0 up on the Five Flyers. Please contain your shock, everybody. Miko Usula has the Steelers ahead in that one. Panthers lead Guildford by 2-0, thanks to goals from Cooper Zek and Jean-Paul Gorat. Should be there'll be certainly more eyes, I think, with the Elite League coming towards the weekend and the second semi-final of the Challenge Cup between Belfast and Nottingham. But we will touch on those bits and pieces later. What we're going to do, Jack, is I'm going to be brave. I'm going to click another button here, because what this should do on everybody else's screen on the stream is it's going to pull up the fixture graphics, which you may not be able to see, or you might be able to see. I don't know how this works, this bit, but we're going to hope that it is going to work.
Yeah, I can see.
Yeah, so that's what we're wanting. So the big issue, so we'll start then, of course, with the cup from last weekend. Saturday night, a 5-4 win for the Raiders against Leeds. I think probably my big takeaway from this on Saturday evening was, yes, Romford won, and actually fantastic for them. They got their great little moment in the sun of they won the home leg, but they spent so much of the time chasing the game. It did make me worry going into Sunday that they were going to be too tired, all things considered.
Yeah.
At the end of Saturday night, when you sat, when you went to bed with your cup of Horlicks or whatnot, how are you feeling about this going into the following day?
I think I said to Dan and Charlie, I know a lot of people saying they need 2 or 3 goals going into it. I just think they needed to not lose that game. And then the Sunday is a 1-game shootout. Whoever wins that game wins it. And I know Leeds will have the advantage being at home. But I can imagine they were going off pure adrenaline from the crowd. Looking at the goals, I mean, it's Shewfelt Miller just carrying the show. They've done that so many times this season. And that last 5 minutes, you can see it was those two combined for both of those goals. Just cross crease and at the back door, just first timer. They've done it so many times. The teams try and stop it, but they'll do it anyways. It's like Ovechkin. It will come over to him. You know what he's going to do, but it will still go in. And Shewfelt every time, 9 times out of 10, is going to get it in the back of the net. Maybe it was a case of being a bit tired, but that's the first time they've beaten Leeds. I know it's a first leg, but that's the first time they've beaten Leeds since 2022. So it was always going to be a challenge to get a win against them. But I think you could be right in terms maybe they were a bit tired, bit leggy going into that second leg, because it was the first 10 minutes, like you said at the start, which cost them the game.
Yeah. And then, of course, we headed into Sunday, and as we can see, Leeds 3-0 up inside 7 minutes and change. Jake Sylvester pulls one back to start giving people hope. And then Jordan Buesa, it's crazy to think in a 4-1 game, all 5 goals were scored within 10 minutes and 30 seconds. But this is what Leeds do. They are the relentless machine that seemingly, when it really matters, can turn it on. And yes, they do occasionally get knocked down. And I can hear Peterborough fans ringing in the back of my head as I say that. But ultimately, when it came down to it, on the night in the castle, Leeds managed to do the business. You think about that final against Peterborough a couple of years ago where they came in 6-0 down, got it back to 5, got 5 goals and then couldn't quite finish it off as Austin Mitchell-King nearly launched himself headfirst into the plexiglass. But it was all right on the night, finally. Leeds take the cup, and ultimately, you can't argue it. The good teams turn up when they need to.
Yeah, I think they've shown many times this season they're probably the hardest team to beat if they've got a lead, and a 3-goal lead in the game, a 2-goal lead in the tie. You saw it when they went to Milton Keynes. When they got that 3-goal lead, the 4-1, they can just shut down games, and fair play to Leeds. They are so tough when they've got a lead to try and get back into it. And I heard that Romford had a lot of chances in that second and third. And even when you get past the Leeds defence, which has been excellent, you've then got the goalie to try and get past. And Sam Gospel, just the last 3 years, has proven time and time again why he is the best netminder in the league. And again, he's done that. And they stopped Shaw Miller and Shufelt from scoring. And when you're doing that, you're probably going to beat the Raiders. No disrespect to any of the rest of their players, but those two are the guys you look at when Raiders are going to get the goals.
Fantastic little message in the chat from Thomas Graham of the same parish as yourself. Unfortunate for any fan who got stuck in traffic and arrived in the 12th minute. Yep, can't argue that one at all.
Hey, it's the joys of Wi-Fi.
That one would hurt. We'll get to the good one first, Jack. We'll get to the good one first that you want. Yeah, we'll get to the good one first that you want to talk about, because then we'll have to get to the one that you don't want to talk about in a minute. Which is this one that's on screen now for everybody.
Yeah.
A huge win, given the context of the weekend with Leeds not playing and Swindon and MK doing home and home. This was huge, and Swindon ultimately poked their noses in front, but MK do it again and still nick a point even though they lose.
Yeah, that point was so big for them, and actually, you cannot fault the effort from any of the players in this game, but the quality wasn't really what we've seen in other games with the two teams against each other. A lot of the goals are quite scrappy goals. The one which Mar will probably want back, where Hamill just banked it off him. Nels, Billings, they were in front of the net. Solder give the puck away for the overtime winner, which Malazinski kind of just scraped over the line. So in terms of quality, it wasn't an unbelievable game, but then it was two teams battling hard, desperate for the points. And Swindon had to win this game, because if you lose this game, you then have all the pressure to go into the hardest barn to try and win just to make up the points. So we had to win the game. And I said after the game to Charlie and Dan, if we win on Sunday, that is an unbelievable win. But if MK win on the Sunday, that point would be so good for them, because they actually gain on Swindon again. And unfortunately, for a Swindon fan's point of view, that's exactly what they did.
Should be said, though, one of the big things about MK and Swindon about the way they play, both quite big, expansive teams.
Yeah.
Ultimately, their criticism is sometimes that does mean they have been a little bit one-dimensional. They've kind of cancelled each other out and actually had to find a way to play differently. That speaks to kind of the evolution of both these sides, where Leeds have kind of been able to do a little bit of both, and both of these teams have sometimes been a little bit lacking. Quite a big statement for both teams to be able to kind of go into the trenches and battle it out a little bit more. Certainly because neither side known as being the most physical, although Leeds aren't particularly either. But if you wouldn't necessarily want either of these teams to be getting into a battle in the trenches, but they've gone and they've done it, and actually both teams getting points out of it. 4-3 away on the road, MK will be kind of happy. Swindon got the win at home. Not ultimately the result of the weekend, but a good statement for both teams. We're here to battle. We're not just here to do the fancy stuff.
Yeah, I think every game at the Links Centre, bar maybe a couple in recent years where Swindon have won comfortably, has been a tight game. I remember the playoff game last year that went to overtime as well, and Nell got it. But obviously, that was huge for us because we just needed the 2 points, and it wasn't a league game. But because it is a league game, that point they get in overtime is massive for them. And I think I remember you said on our podcast a couple of weeks ago that those little points you get in overtime, they can add up over the rest of the season. And who knows, if MK win it by a point, they'll be looking back. And just want to shout out Headley, actually. He made probably one of the best saves I've ever seen. Aaron Nell open net in the slot, and Headley just whacks his paddle out and just gets the tip of the paddle and saves it. So that could be a big turning point of the season. But yeah, I was really happy after the night, but obviously it all went down to that Sunday game.
Yeah. Someone, G in the chat, Hope Nell bought Solder a beer for that OT assist. Yep.
Well, actually,
Solder so. We'll keep chucking our.
I was going to say, well, I'll wait for the second game to talk about Solder because I thought he was unbelievable.
Either way, the rest of Saturday night we do need to have a look at. And well, Peterborough decided to put on the first couple of overs of a T20 game down at Cribbs Causeway against the Peterborough Phantoms. Bailey Harewood still racking up the points and Reece Smethan with the goal, but unfortunately, far too little, far too late. Peterborough have given Bristol an old-fashioned pounding down in the southwest.
Yeah, I said on the podcast with Dan, Peterborough were never losing that game. I remember the last one was a 10 or 11-2 win for Bristol. So, yeah, to cut it short, Peterborough were never going to lose this one just for pride. And I don't think Slava would have let them lose that one either. So I think they'll actually be a bit disappointed they didn't get 10 goals like Bristol did against them last time. But at the end of the day, 2 points for Peterborough. And I think that game kind of pushed Bristol out of the playoff race, really, especially with Telford winning on the Sunday as well.
Another goal as well, I noticed, for Louis Kynaston, his third goal in the last 5 games. So he's really started picking up. He's slowly, I think it did feel like the Peterborough and Slapper were trying to turn Jasper Foster into kind of that Will Weldon face-off kind of guy. I did wonder because sometimes Foster's points kind of jump up and down. I kind of wonder where Kynaston was going to fit into the new order as that sort of that space kind of opened up. But ultimately, he seems to be carving his own little niche, and as he's been getting some more minutes at the end of the season, he's turning in. He was always a pretty handy little player. Already has a playoff winners medal under his belt at such a young age. He's popped up again and scored. And scoring from depth is one of the things that Peterborough was so potent at the back end of last season. They got them a playoff title. Goals from people like Foster, Hunt, Kynaston. That's going to help them along. Joe Gretton even popping up with a goal there as well. And I doubt he's watching, Joe. But when you score, even I'm surprised, and I'm pretty sure you might be as well. But Peterborough's ability to get depth scoring in key moments is always massive, and it's great for them to get their legs under them in a game like this where they can really give a team an old-fashioned kicking.
Yeah, I think Jasper Foster's had a really tough season because he missed the first 4 months out injured, and we got injured in pre-season, which was a kick in the teeth, and that actually gave Kynaston a big step-up opportunity on that third line. And Charlie actually said to me today he thinks that Jarvis Hunt is going to be the Will Weldon regen because he plays centre, obviously, and he's a bit older, and he's had a really good season as well. So, yeah, just Peterborough always have a really nice crop of talent, and I know they lost. He's lost my mind. I know they lost that guy from Sheffield, Tom Palmer, but they've gained. So I'm sure Hartman's going to be developing well. But yeah, on to the next game.
Yeah, certainly on to the next one, and a tough one for the Steel Dogs. They were put through the ringer a little bit, 3-0, 2-0 and 3-1 ahead. The Bees come roaring back into it to be 3-all by the end of the second period, but ultimately Walker Summer going to do Walker Summer things and score, which is what he does. And Elmary Helfors putting the exclamation mark on it. 5-3 win for the Steel Dogs at Sheffield. One of those ones where you probably would have predicted the scoreline, and not necessarily the method of how they got to it. Yeah,
I think we haven't even talked about it, but with Tremblay going to the Steelers, the two imports really need to step up now. And Walker Sommer's just on a ridiculous goal pace at the moment. I think he scored a wraparound and then a snipe. So he's just honestly filthy for this league for goals. And then Helfors as well, who maybe points-wise hasn't done as well as he thought, but he could take that step back with Tremblay and Walker Sommer getting a lot of points. But now he's got to step up, and sounds like he had a really good game as well on that Saturday.
Well, I think the thing people sometimes forget about Helfors is he was 22 when he came to Britain to start this time with the Sheffield Shield. He's a really, really young guy, still learning his trade in effect. Didn't go too much into Tremblay because spent 15 minutes talking about it last week. So didn't.
Oh yeah, because it got announced on your day, but I didn't get to talk about it on the podcast. Yeah.
But so we don't need to beat that dead horse anymore. And then of course Sheffield went and compounded things by signing Reece Kelly for the Steelers. So happy Wednesday, Tuesday, Wednesday, everybody. Goals from the depth from the Bees. Good to see Callum Wilson on the score sheet. Of course. With Dan not present, I'll say Basingstoke never dies. And then Saturday, madness at Dumfries. As the Sharks lost their third game in a row by 6-5, and a last-minute winner, 51 seconds from time, and a power play goal from Jason Hewitt. A crazy, crazy end where the Sharks were leading at 54 minutes exactly and lost by 6-5 to the Hull Seahawks. Matty Davis will be absolutely happy. A hat-trick from Emil Speck, which, of course, keeps the locals and the local off-licenses very, very pleased in the Kingdom of Hull. A tough loss for the Sharks as well, and another one where they ended up with both Liam Stenton and Carl Carruth suspended as a result of getting into a fight at the end of the second period.
Yeah, that killed them off, I think, for the Sunday, because I can imagine you were at the game, so you can talk about it when we get onto it. But I can imagine Arsenu, Kel Beattie, Dan Skin were all doing half an hour plus ice time in that game. And Liam Stenton, for me, has been one of the shocks of the season for how well he's actually done. And he really carries and drives that defence for Solway. So that was a miss for them in the third period, which is what they've struggled with the most. It was the third period which they lost it against Swindon. Again, 2 late goals against Hull. And then you'll talk about a bit more about the Sunday as well in a bit. But it was that third period again, which was just a goal fest. So they're just really struggling to shut games down in that third period and get points. And I can't put a finger on what it is, but it's consistently happening, and they can't be doing that if they really want that 8th place.
No, especially with Telford picking up a decent run of form in recent times as well. Into Sunday then, and look, it's appeared. If you want to check out the really, really in-depth bits and pieces on this, then of course, bannersonthewall.wordpress.com, the latest Banners on the Road is there, a bit of in-the-box thinking. And of course, if you want to check out the highlights of me and Joe commentating on this game, make sure to go check out the Berkshire Bees YouTube channel for this. 4 games in a row, they have lost by exactly the same scoreline. Aside from the virtual statistical impossibility, the thing I will say about this game was in some ways, actually, I don't think the issue for the Sharks was the defence, because I think actually, apart from the Cabaye goal that gave the Bees their 5th, where Danskin got his pocket picked, I actually think their D played really well. I think that they did a really good job. The problem that they had, as you can kind of see from the 4 goals in the third period for the Bees, is the team defence. The forwards coming back look lost when they're trying to defend. I think has been a real big issue for them. And again, if my memory serves me correctly from my notes that I've written, no goal for Nolan Gardner since the 25th of January when the Sharks beat the Bees at the Shark Tank. A hat-trick for Callie Robertson is great, but they need all their top-end guys firing on all cylinders. They didn't get it here, and they were the best team for 35 minutes. Could have blown the Bees away, didn't, and suffered the consequence.
Yeah, it's nuts, isn't it? I think Gardner's, this is the first time really Gardner's going through a patch where he can't really find the back of the net. And he missed his penalty shot against Bristol as well in the shootout. So he is a massive factor for Solway. And I know they're still scoring 5 goals. They've got that's nuts. They've scored 5 goals in the last 4 games and have got 1 point. Sorry, 1 point against Bristol. Like, with 5 goals, really you should be winning at least 1 or 2 of them games. And they've just not managed to close games out. And yeah, as you said, I can imagine that the D gave it their all. And I heard you on comms because I watched the highlights. They just ran out of steam. And sometimes you can get a bit sloppy. And I can imagine the forward depth as well wasn't as much as they'd like. So, yeah, just really tough for Solway. And they're going through this slump, whereas Telford went through at the start of the season. And now I know they're losing 4-0 tonight. It's now 4. But they're kind of going through where they're picking up more points now. And you'd rather that at the end of the season than at the start.
And also as well, with the fact that the Carruth and Stenton suspensions have been sent to DOPS because there's not good enough footage, so the referees' reports are going to be brought in. Those guys potentially looking at extra sits down. Mason Alderson getting an automatic 1-game suspension for his fight with Liam Morris, and his boarding hit on Morris in the 3rd period has been sent to DOPS. I should say rightly, it's not on the highlights because of the fact it's gone to DOPS. If you were watching the stream, you'll have seen it. I'd be surprised if Mason Alderson isn't sitting an extra couple of games because he had the right to try and make a hit. He doesn't have a right to go through the guy's nameplate and through his numbers to do that and put the guy face first into the bench. The thing that will probably save Mason Alderson a lot of extra time is Liam Morris was able to carry on because he then jumped Mason Alderson in the last 5 seconds after he'd absolutely nailed Will Stead to the wall. None of which unfortunately is on the highlights because DOPS are looking at it. The thing I will say is that the hit on Stead was legitimate because Stead turned late. And I think that was probably why the referees didn't call it. And it's why I didn't think it was a penalty. But then Morris has just gone, nah, that's enough. And has just leapt on him and they started beating each other up, which was, having commentated for the better part of 2 years, the first time I've ever commentated on a fight. So it took a while, but I got there in the end.
Really?
So we'll take that one. But either way,
Guildford don't have fights.
Yeah, it's bizarre that. No, they don't. We'll see what happens going forward with that one. Maybe I'll get one at some stage, but we don't know. But either way, the Bees with a bit of resiliency in the Sharks left scratching their heads again. And then sorry, but we have to talk about it. Although shout out Ed Bradley scoring 23 seconds of time to ruin the shutout.
Headley was fuming at the end. I can imagine why. But yeah, he's still got man of the match. He was really good. But yeah, Bradley just putting a dagger in.
The frustrating thing here for Swindon is that, of course, we talked about it earlier. Milton Keynes is a really, really tough place to go. What's it? 1 regulation loss in the better part of 2 years. And you held them for 32 minutes. And then it's all just fallen apart much quicker than I think you ever would have liked to. Ben Solder, as you mentioned, had a really good game. He's picked up a goal as well. Dylan Lawrence back, penalty shot goal as well. The last thing anybody from Leeds and Swindon want is MK. Nobody wants to lose, but MK getting a big statement win as well against a fellow title contender when they needed to. And MK come out of the weekend with more points than Swindon.
Yeah, it's one of them where MK probably played one of their best games of the season, or definitely their best second period of the season, which is what they've struggled in previous weekends. It was the second period which cost them against Leeds, obviously conceding 3 goals in that one. But they were just so good. I mean, we actually played a really good road game for the first half an hour, but we just didn't score. And I actually think if we score first in that game, Antonov had a couple chances, but Headley made some good saves. And then the actual goal which they scored was from Jake Bricknell hitting the crossbar, it rimming round to County, and he's been their best player this season. And he made a really nice shot into the bottom left corner. So really good from both teams for the first half an hour. But I think Swindon needed the goal. And when MK got that first goal and then the second goal, which was also a nice goal, the third goal was just a killer, really. And yeah, Swindon have been on the end of some tough ones in Milton Keynes, and unfortunately Sunday was one of them. But I'm not even too disappointed because the first half an hour we really I thought gave them a good toe-to-toe game. But yeah, they credit to MK. I know me and Charlie don't like saying that, but credit to Milton Keynes. They were very, very good that second half an hour.
Is it easier to win? Is it easier to lose a game like this when you kind of get blown away in a little bit? Because in some ways, I think it's easier to lose like this than it is to lose in the last. Think how Solway fans must be feeling at the moment. They must be absolutely pig sick. Whereas if you're 5-1 down, you're 5-0 down heading into the last sort of 14 minutes, you kind of know that you can't get back from that point. You can kind of make peace.
Tyler Perry went in goal as well, which I think was the right decision. Just get Mar out of it and let him just sit the rest of the game on the bench, because we know how good he has been this season. So you don't want any more just goals going in. And to be fair, the 2 goals to kill it off, Ross Venus and Sean Norris, were both 1-on-1. So it's very tough on him. But yeah, you're right. Here's a stat for you. That's the first time Swindon have lost a game by more than 2 goals. Every single game this season has been tight, and it's been stressful. I'll tell you that, because there's a lot of games in the last few seasons where we have been blown out and we know we were going to lose that game. But every single game this season, bar this one on Sunday night, it has gone right down to the wire. It's been 1 or 2 goals in it. And yeah, unfortunately, it had to be probably the most important game. So, yeah. But as for Swindon, I'm not too disappointed. We've come up against a really good MK side. And you can see the differences in Milton Keynes. They look a lot different to last couple seasons.
Back up north then, and back-to-back 4-point weekends for the Hull Seahawks. Then I did quickly listen to Slapshot Syndicate that came out earlier today. They did wonder whether they're going to claw their way back to Swindon. I have to confess, I don't think they will. I think they're just a little too far away, given the. I think it's really easy to think that that's a doable thing after Swindon lose in such a way to MK. But it's 8 points from 8 from the last 2 weekends for Matty Davis's boys. Owen Sobchak with the game winner at 57-29. All of the big names firing on all cylinders in this one. Summer, Björkley Nerdstrom, getting goals for the Steel Dogs, Svek, Chamberlain, Cornell. A bit of an interesting one when I was thinking about this game, because I wonder whether this game is an outside bet at this playoff final.
Ooh, really?
I think there's a path for the Steel Dogs to do it. I think it's a very hard path, but I genuinely think the Hull Seahawks are in with a shout of winning the playoffs. I have to say that they've left it too late in the league, but I think they're starting. If they can keep this sort of run of form going and maybe get 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, that sort of level's worth of form in terms of points heading towards the back end of the season, I think the Seahawks could be a force to be reckoned with. And I'm not saying that because I know you'd be watching Matty Davies.
Yeah, I think with the whole Seahawks, no one asks how they win. If you get the 2 points, you get the 2 points. They still have Davy Phillips to come back. I think there's no point rushing him. Like, I think they know they're probably going to get 4th now. You can outscore games just like they have been. We said on the podcast, me and Dan, if you want a team to watch, go watch Hull, because it's going to be a high scoring both ends of the ice game. And that's happened the last 4 games where they've got the 4 points. But it's a tricky one, because I'm not sure about Sheffield. I think Tremblay is a massive, massive loss. And yesterday, without him, they did look a bit lost against Leeds. I watched the stream, and you can't do that in playoffs. And I know it will be a bit different, but I think Hull are definitely one to look out for in playoffs. I can't imagine the likes of Sobchak, Cornel, Svek, Chamberlain, Hewitt, all of those guys are going to go another season without making Cov. Like, I think they've got to this season.
Yeah. As I said when I came on your show, Hull hockey is Vindaloo hockey. We are going to score 1 more than you, and that is the methodology. And speaking of scoring, look at this disaster piece of a graphic, everybody. 18 goals, and unusually for Telford, not all on one side. Hi, Tigers 2. 12-6. What a nonsense this was. Trying to keep up with it whilst I was commentating was hilarious, as every so often Joe and I would just hold our phones up at each other and just show them what was going on. I mean, fair play Mitch Walensky, 4 goals in a game. Welcome to British hockey.
Yeah, I just want to mention a comment Jamie put in the chat about Smetham. He's actually having a really good season for Bristol. I think he was signed on a two-way, but he's played every game, I think, for the Pitbulls. And I think he is actually one of those youngsters who, if he stays with Bristol, could be definitely one for the future. He's a really good goal scorer, and he's got quite a lot of goals this season. I don't actually know the specific amount, but it's definitely over 10, I believe. So yeah, but I feel bad for Wolinski. He's come in. He's got big boots to fill, obviously, with Price, because Price was very, very good for Bristol, and kind of kept them within a playoff spot to where it is now. But yeah, it's just the defense, and Tanner Butler being out doesn't help. Because he's your main import D. And yeah, it's just tough, innit, for Bristol. You cannot concede, if we're being blunt about it, you cannot concede 21 goals in a weekend. You can't.
Reece Smetham, 40 games played, 14 goals, 15 assists for 29 points in his first season of senior hockey in Britain. Mitch Wolinski has 9 goals in 6 games, so that's why they signed him. Obviously, not going as well for Telford tonight. Currently 4-1 in Breton between the Phantoms and the Tigers. But it's been even with defeat tonight, it's been a trending upwards in Telford's form, where the Sharks have been trending down. So yes, this does give Solway a game in hand. But if you're I know Tom Watkins was not particularly happy with his team's performance after this game, because nobody's happy conceding 6 goals. But Telford is slowly edging in the right direction where Solway haven't. Henderson's playing decently. Finn Howells has started playing a bit better as well. David Thompson. We talk about those top end guys making a difference. But as well, for Telford, Louis Newell guesting on D, Adam Harding guesting on D. It's a bit of a one-in-all-in mentality in Telford, and it seems to be paying off for them, even if it's not maybe the prettiest of methodologies they're using.
Yeah, I do think it is a bit carried by imports. If we're looking at Henderson, I agree the depth guys, actually, because we're talking James Smith and Brian, I think that's how you, or Bryn. He's got a few goals recently, but the imports, Henderson, last 4 games, 5 points, 3 points, 2 points, 5 points, including 7 goals. And then if you're looking at the other import who did miss a few games with injury, but he's back in his last 5 games, 6 points, 3 points, 1 point, 4 points. So the top guys are really turning it on, and they might be they're a bit like Hull at the moment. They might be conceding a lot, but their top guys know how to score. I know they're losing tonight 4-1, and the top guys aren't firing as much. But when they're battling for the odd 2 points every weekend, it will work in some games. And yeah, they're 3 points ahead at the moment. Yeah, it's going to be a good battle. But they still play Solway 2 more times this season.
We'll get to one of those momentarily, because we have news from the House of Steel and a first Steelers goal in the league for Sam Tremblay. It is 2-0 over Fife. It makes your own jokes on that one.
He's playing 4th line as well tonight.
Then, of course, we do need to look at this game from last night, of course. He is, yes. Probably a good idea given the fact they played together. But either way, this game from Tuesday, the Leeds Knights, having won a cup, they went back to battle 2 days later and shut out the Steel Dogs in Ice Sheffield. I say it a lot. Jack, the Leeds Knights are relentless. They are ridiculous. And Finn Braden with a 2-goal night and rewarded with a new 2-year contract for the Knights that was announced just before we came live on air. What a talent that young man is. Everybody talks about Brown, but Innes Gallagher, Finn Braden, there's a generation of even younger guys coming through at Leeds. They are ridiculous, and they even gave some of the other guys from Leeds Knights 2 a bit of a run out in this game as well.
Yeah, I think the thing I love the most about Leeds is their third line knows they're a third line, but their third line plays the third line role the best of any team. Like Finn Braden on his Instagram story, for example, when they won the trophy, he put best third line in the league, because they don't moan, they don't complain if they're not on the top 6. But you look in there, like, I think 3 of the goals were on that, or 2 of the goals that game were from the third line, Braden getting both of them. And it's such a good third line. And then when you've got Brown, who's really turned it on, when you've got Bissonnette, who just gets assists for fun, he's chipping in with a few goals. they're picking it up, and they. I said that I think Milton Keynes will win this league, but you just cannot write off the Knights. And I actually think them winning this final is kind of blown a bit of smoke up their bum to go and win this treble now.
Yeah. Should also shout out as well Michael Daneko, who's obviously played a couple of games this season, but a Leeds Knights debut last night for Danny Harrison, at least named in the lineup. I'm sure how much I think he will have actually got. But with Matt Hayward unavailable yesterday evening, an opportunity for Danny Harrison to at least get onto the bench for that one. Not a bad first night on the game sheet in the national division for that young man. So congratulations to him. That means we've gone through all the games. We'll have a quick look at the national division table as it stands. And the Knights are still within touching distance of the MK Lightning. 1 game less, 2 points behind. It's then a 3-point gap between the Knights and the Wildcats for the battle for Steve Nell's love and affection in second place. And then the Wildcats on the same number of games are 5 points ahead of Hull. Tigers have got themselves firmly into 8th spot. Of course, if they lose tonight, they will have played a game more and be 3 points ahead of the Sharks. So the Sharks are pretty much going to have to run the table. Mathematically, the Bees are not out of it yet, but they are edging closer to the precipice. Bristol a little bit closer, but at the moment, like you said you've said quite a lot over the last few weeks, Jack. You think it's Milton Keynes to win. I think that 5 overtime lost games is the thing that's kind of making the difference here for MK, because Leeds lose in regulation. MK find a way to get anything out of the jaws of defeat.
Yeah, if this was the format of regulation wins get you 3 points, I think Leeds are winning the league, but it's not, and it's only 2 points. And if, as you said, I think when you come on our podcast, those little extra points, they just get you edging it a bit higher, and they could be massive come the end of the season. But yeah, it is crazy. 23 regulation, Leeds have 31, but that's something which is different this season for MK. Yes, they've gone to overtime a lot, but they've just dug in. They've got 8 overtime wins. I think 4 or 5 of them on a shootout. And their defence, I know I mentioned Solder, who I think has been their defenseman of the season. But bringing in Forsberg has just been night and day for that D. He can go forward. He's a big body. He'll throw the hits as well. He's just been huge for them. And I think he's more the type of D-man which they needed than Spadafore. But when they've got that much Brit talent, they can play Spadafore and Forsberg as well as a pairing, which is just mental. But be interesting to see how Wallace uses this extra import now, because I said to Jamie, he can't overthink it. You can't change it every single game. I don't think you can do that. You need to stick with something, and maybe the odd game you bring in Spadafore, or the odd game Wallace goes on the bench. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he plays it.
Should say as well, a second goal of the night for Nathan Salem. He scored on the power play. It's now 5-1 Peterborough at 31-47. Either way, that game is still ongoing. We will have, and that, of course, is that one. Of course, a massive thanks, as always, to the boy Max Van Mullen. Spared some blushes of the weekend for the Buccaneers against Streatham, which I will touch on later. But that's obviously happening right now. And then upcoming Friday Night Lights, the Cup champs will about face from Tuesday night as Leeds welcome Sheffield to the Castle. That is a 7:30 face-off over at Ellen Road for that one. On to Saturday then, and as full a docket as we can possibly have, and a few interesting ones here. The Bees take on the Hull Seahawks. Peterborough welcome Leeds. Solway with a huge game, probably the game of Saturday night, as they will welcome the Telford Tigers to Dumfries. Swindon take on Romford, which we will see how Romford respond from a tough weekend last weekend emotionally. And the Bristol Pitbulls welcome the MK Lightning. Jack, that game in southwest Scotland is massive for the location of that last playoff spot.
Yeah, Solway have been really good at home this season. That's where they've got probably the majority of their points. They need to put these last 3-4 games behind them. They really need to. They need to get 2 points. Really, I think they can't let it go to overtime. They have to win in regulation, and I think if they get, I think Goal Phantom 6-1. Sorry, but if they can get that third, if they've got a lead going into the third period, it will do them wonders if they can just kill the game off with a lead. And I think that will be huge going into it. But also, there'll be Alderson down. We don't know what the bans will possibly be with Stenton and Carruth. So they'll be really hoping they've got Stenton. I think he's massive for them. And they've got to find some depth scoring. And Gardner's got to score. He has to score this game.
I'll ask you, as you're obviously going to be there, Swindon Romford, how are you feeling about this one? Because you're kind of playing Romford at what could be a good time and what could be a bad time for them, because they could be really licking their wounds, or they're about to come down to the Link Centre massively pissed off, and you're about to be on the end of an old-fashioned Romford fighting force.
Yeah, I'll say watch out for Glenn Billen. He always has sick games against Romford. Obviously, he's a Romford lad. But he's like Ethan James's nightmare when it comes to playing Romford. Be interesting to see if they do play Owen Ryder, because Ethan James would have had just an intense weekend. But yeah, you can never write Romford off. We need to try and get a nice little win at home. Obviously, we got that win against Milton Keynes last weekend. But if we get a nice convincing win back at home, that'll do me. I kind of was hoping a little bit that Romford would have won the cup, and they would have been so drunk all week that on the Saturday we go and get a nice little game. But that is not the case. But yeah, it'll be a good little game. TJ always likes turning up in these games because he knows me and Charlie are watching. So.
And speaking of your brother, he has popped his head above the parapet. Slapper is winning the playoffs again, says Charlie.
He was debating this with me earlier.
The thing to remember, of course, is the joy of the many things I have said about stylistically what I think about Peterborough. If they win again, still be commentating over the highlights. Sorry, folks. Either way, we look to Sunday and another full weekend's worth. And actually, what could be a very interesting game for your boys away at Telford, who could be, of course, coming in with a massive amount of confidence. And Max has managed to leave off part of a graphic there, but that will be the Bristol Pitbulls that is taking on the MK Lightning on Sunday. Hull take on the Bees, Romford take on Peterborough. Solway have a tough trip down to ice. Sheffield, definitely not a game they're going to be winning 6-0, because as we know, Solway only get into 6-5 games. Hard to know which is going to be because there's kind of a bit of a mishmash of guys in different positions playing each other there. I mean, potentially another big weekend for Hull. I mean, when you think of who they've got on Saturday, and then the Bees at home on Sunday, Matty Davies could be looking at the back of back-to-back 4-point weekends.
Yeah. Hull are getting that momentum for playoffs, and that's why I think they're going to be the team to watch out for. Obviously, not getting it last season, but yeah, they'll be looking for back-to-back 4-point weekends. Interesting one for Solway. I think with Solway and Telford, I think the results on Saturday are going to massively depend what they do on Sunday, because Swindon have been very good at Telford this season. Telford haven't beaten us, but I'm interested to see what we'd be like playing against Telford now they've got their established top six with Thompson, Henderson. Their top six is very strong. They can get a lot of goals, but it's always been the defence with them, and same with Solway. So, yeah, some interesting ones. But I think Solway and Telford are the ones I'm going to be looking out for, I think, on that Sunday.
I then press the buttons, which means that everything scoots back to what it should be, which is generally our places instead, because that, of course, ends our roundup of National Division bits and pieces. Of course, folks, we'll keep Jack for a couple more minutes and stick things in the chat if you've got questions for him. We only touched on it very briefly, of course. Finn Braden with that new two-year deal with the Knights. Very, very good piece of business, I think, there from Ryan Aldrich. It should be said to keep him around. He stepped up massively since he came down to Leeds full time from Billingham. 6-2 as David Thompson pulls another one back for the Telford Tigers. If they pull that back, there's going to be some. To be fair, if Solway have another 6-5 game, somebody's ringing somebody for match fixing. I think is probably where that one will go. But Braden has slowly over time really just established himself as one of the sort of the best of potentially the next wave coming through.
Yeah, I think if Brown is to move on in the next year or two, obviously we don't know if he will, but Braden is slowly progressing into that guy now. I don't think he'll be as prolific and dominant as Brown, but both ends of the ice, Finn Braden, for how young he is, 19, 20 years old, he's so hockey smart and he knows the positioning to be in. Like, most of his goals are just from him knowing where to be and having the IQ of playing with the likes. He's on first power play with the likes of Bissonnette, Barron. Like, he's very smart for his age. And yeah, I'm interested. I think we're going to be leak it, but I think we're going to be interviewing him. So I'm interested to ask him the question of, when was that time, that moment for you where it did just switch to know you are that guy in terms of being able to get all those points? What was the moment which helped him switch into that?
As is a Billingham boy, you'll need to make sure you ask him about what makes a good chicken parmo, because otherwise the guys in the Billingham Stars podcast will complain publicly, as is their way to do so. Just quickly touching on it, because of course you don't go to many of them, but you did recently go to a Swindon Wildcats 2 game.
Oh, yeah.
As we are a show here on the What's Current stream that kind of covers all 5 leagues across the NIHL. You watch much more national division. That's just the nature of the beast. But what, as somebody who doesn't watch a great amount of hockey in the levels below the national, the opportunity to go and see what's kind of the next sort of the wave bubbling under of Wildcats. Obviously, Jamie Smith has come up internally, been a massive success of a player. He looks like he's going to be have a massive amount of potential going forward. Lipsy, Shaw, Aaron Nell's always had that potential of kind of coming through. Was there anybody who really took your attention playing for that Wildcats 2 side as might be in the next wave to come up into the first team?
Oscar Sagan. He looks really skillful. He is number 89. He's Polish. His favorite player growing up was Malazinski. And for his age, he looks really quick. And I think this next couple years in the 2s are going to be huge for him. He's had some training sessions with the Wildcats men's team, and he's not really looked at a place either. So Oscar Sagan, he's one which excites me. And of course, Jan Kostel Jr. as well. The size, the build he's got, which we knew he was going to be like that because his dad was massive and so strong on the puck. But I think he's going to be a little bit different player to his dad. And I'm interested to see his development. But those are the two youngsters who I think could have a shot in a couple of years. And Ben Clark-Leach as well. I don't know if you saw that, Anthony, you might go mention it, but against Slough, Swindon had 5 shots in the whole game. Slough had 64, and Ben Clark-Leach saved 60 out of 64. So if he's used in the right way, obviously there's a big discussion on Brit netminders, but if he's given that opportunity slowly, he's definitely one to watch out for. Zane McKenzie, by the way, has just scored for the Phantoms.
Indeed, guessed him in. The thing with Ben Clark-Leach as well is, unfortunately, the injury to Brett Massey has really, really resulted in Ben taking a lot more of the net this year than I think he was anticipating and needing to do. And some may wonder whether he's been potentially a little bit overplayed. And actually, some ways, as a netminder, it can work. It can work in both directions for him. But he's been tested by the best in South One, and generally, even if Swindon aren't winning, he's generally come out of it with some really good performances. You can't argue with a 60 save performance, even if you do lose 4-1. But what was your overall impression of South One hockey?
It is slower. It's slower, but that's just like the National is a bit slower than the Elite League, because I've watched quite a few Elite League games. So it is a bit slower, but I like that there is a lot of youngsters in it. And you can see the level. Like for Romford, for example, Harvey Briggs played for the Bucks. And he was the main guy, and he did try and do it a bit on his own because he kind of knows he was the guy. But Swindon were very, very good. And hey, it's because it is Swindon. Maybe that's why I watched it. But obviously, like, it is nice to see the young talents coming through, and then they're kind of hugged, if you want to say, by the older players of Ben Neversell, Stone, who've been around it, Jan Kostel Senior. So it is really cool to see some of those older players. Ben Neversell, by the way, he might not have the pace, but his hands, he's so good at stick handling and control of the puck. Like, he's still got it. They don't lose it, but they may lose a bit of pace.
Ollie Stone has an overtime backhand winner in South One this season. It's sort of weird. That's the weird through the looking glass moment we're in. Jack, I'm guessing you're not feeling brave enough to join us as we go through the North and South Division 1 and 2 Cup
I think I'd just be sat here really just listening. So I'll probably just listen on my phone instead of being on here like.
In which case, then, for the people who aren't familiar, quickly give them the spiel. Macca's Talk Hockey usually comes out. Podcast usually comes out on a Wednesday. What do people need to know? Where can they find you if they need you?
So Charlie's on a little break at the moment, working and traveling, but he'll be on at some point. I don't know when that will be, but yeah, we just, me and Dan, who is also hockey mad, Basingstoke fan. He's been coming on with me. We occasionally have my dad, but we've been blessed by the amount of players which have joined us for little interviews and stuff now and again. So we've always got players coming on from different teams. But yeah, we just talk about hockey, all the games, a bit like you do, but just National League based, really. Maybe a couple news bits from other leagues as well, but it's just National League based, really.
Yeah, if you search Macca's Talk Hockey into the variety of social medias, you will eventually pick them up. Their episodes usually come out some point on their YouTube channel and Spotify and all your podcast platforms on a Wednesday morning or early
Tuesday or Wednesday, depends how lazy I am.
Insert your own jokes here. But either way, Jack, thank you very much for joining us. Have a very good rest of the week. And like I said, make sure that you check those guys out. You can also go back and check out my episode from their podcast as well. Yeah. Jack, you have a good evening, mate.
Thanks, mate. Enjoy the rest of the episode. Thanks, guys.
And so off he disappears, and the technology has just about, I think, held out for the most part. It seems to be going okay, which we will take. Either way, end of the second period at Bretton. Peterborough Phantoms 7, Telford Tigers 2. As I'm going to press the next button, we are going to pray that it works, because what it is going to do is we are going to have a quick chat about what's going on in Division 1 and Division 2. I'm just making sure I'm still appearing on the screen at the same time as I do it. We'll head very, very quickly into North 1 because we are already at 9 o'clock with the joy of having had a person join the show. That's obviously sent everything very, very wonky very, very quickly. So I'll just wait for the stream to kind of catch up. Hopefully that's going to work eventually. I'm waiting for it to appear on the screen so I know that you guys are seeing it as well. Which is the hope. There we go. That is all working. Brilliant. Division 1 then in the North, and a win for the league leaders, the Billingham Stars, with a 6-3 victory over the Nottingham Lions. Do go check out this week's Billingham Stars podcast. They did a really, really good in-depth look at this one, actually saying that the Lions look better on the bigger ice in Billingham than they did the following night in Nottingham. But either way, another big important win for the Stars as they look to have that momentum heading into the cup final this upcoming weekend. Goals for the Stars, 2 from Ben Greenhalgh, as well as goals from Chris Sykes, Joe Dowdle, Roland Grittans, and of course Ian Brown, who scored an absolute beauty of a penalty shot in this one. The Lions getting goals through Tyler Somerton, Luke Birchnell, and Alex Rushby. And then Whitley and Blackburn took it back to the 80s with a ridiculous 15-goal game. Blackburn 3-0 up, then 6-1 up, and then it all just went a bit bonkers towards the end. Eventually, all rounded off in the 59th minute by Adam Barnes' 35th goal of the 35th goal of the season. But either way, the Hawks skate home with the 3 points. The Warriors on the board, thanks to Kyle Ross, Anthony Weatherall, Phil Edgar, Adam Wood, Jamie Ord, and Callum Queenan. The Hawks, 2 goals for Jacob Lutwich, 2 for Liam Charnock, 2 for Adam Barnes, 2 for Andy McKinney, and James Royds with the other goal in that one. And then, well, D-side finally back in the win column after a torrid last few games. They eventually get themselves over the line and were 5-0 up inside 24 minutes, thanks to a blistering load of offense. They beat the Leeds Knights by 7-3 against that Division 1 side. A shout out though for Owen Dell, slowly ticking away in terms of the goal totals in this season. 22 on the year for him. He was joined on the scoreboard by Jake Wigginton and Edgar Svengus. Goals for the Dragons coming in the form of 2 from Gary Simpson, and then goals for Jake Witkowski, because of course it's Jake Witkowski, Charlie Phillips, Jakob Hayek, Will Harper and James Parsons. Matt Croyle back between the pipes for the Dragons in this one, 30 saves from 33. Both Knights netminders getting into the game. Great as always to see Luca Tassantri back on the ice. And then the following night, another bad night for the Leeds Knights. So they had to travel up to Whitley, a 7-1 win for the Warriors, who get over their bizarre game that they had on Saturday evening. The Knights were a goal to the good. Fritz Heitzler with the lone goal for the Knights inside 3 minutes, but then it all came crumbling down. Anthony Weatherall, Liam Smedley, Jamie Ord, Adam Wood, Callum Queen, Phil Edgar and Dean Holland with the goals for the Warriors. Got to say for the Warriors, I mean, it does seem like to be a trend over the last couple of weeks that they do seem to get a lot of scoring from a lot of different people, and that in itself is pretty impressive stuff. Apologies, we're just double checking that things are still rolling along, which is what we want it to do. There we go. That's what we needed. It's that horrible moment of, is everything still ticking over is everything ticking over with my phone is in my pocket, which is what we're after. Either way, we move on into that one, and then Solihull, who have gone goal crazy lately, especially with the addition of, you think they've got Nicholas Otterson and Zach Yokoyama in the same team, but they absolutely give the Widnes Wild a lesson. 12-5, another game straight out of the 1980s in this one, as Solihull put double digits on their opponents from Merseyside. The Wild goals coming from Nathan Pollard, the coach of Peterborough Phantoms 2, guesting for the Wild on this evening, as well as Dan Hare, Damani James, Michael Gilbert and Kai Hathaway. 4-goal night for Zach Yokoyama, as well as 2 goals from Alex White, 2 from Matt Maurice, 1 from Sam Chandler, 1 from Nicholas Otterson and 1 from Max from Soden from defence. The one thing we are, of course, is, from my understanding, is Phil Markai out for the rest of the season, obviously wishing him a speedy recovery. And it was a 6-point weekend for Blackburn as they look to keep pace with Billingham, an impressive 4-0 shutout win against the Hull Jets on home ice. Peter Valusiak, Aaron Davies, Darius Bathforth and Adam Barnes. A fantastic season for Darius Bathforth, playing between Blackburn and Bradford. You have to venture that he will not be playing Division 2 hockey this upcoming season. And then the Lions, well, they ran Billingham close on Saturday. It was not close on Sunday, as the Billingham Stars put up double digits on Matt Bradbury's side. And now another name as well that keeps popping up recently, Lucas Dowdle. You can see another couple of goals for him there, as well as Ian Brown, now up to 56 goals on the season. Absolutely insane numbers. Toby Fisher, Alex Rushby and James Mather with the goals for the Lions. As we mentioned, Lucas Dowdle, a hat-trick on the night for him, a hat-trick on the night for Ian Brown, a hat-trick on the night as well for Connor McNulty, Ben Greenhalgh and James Moss back in the lineup after missing Saturday's game with the goals for the Stars. In terms of league action this weekend, just the one league game on Saturday. It is as close as a local derby as you get in North London. Eastside Dragons and the Widnes Wild will do battle at 5:15 over in Queens Ferry. On Sunday in the league, 5 o'clock face-off at Hillheads between the Whitley Warriors and the Hull Jets. The Nottingham Lions take on the Widnes Wild. That is at 5:20, and a 5:30 face-off between the Solihull Barons and the Eastside Dragons, which then, of course, leads us to the Cup final. 6 p.m. on Saturday in Blackburn, 5:30 p.m. at the Forum on Sunday. This time last year, the Blackburn Hawks absolutely blew the Billingham Stars away in Lancashire before taking it back home to the Forum and finishing everything off there. This is the Stars' 3rd cup final in a row, and much like Leeds, they've lost the last 2. Can Stephen Foster's side finally get themselves over the line? Thank you, Andrew, for those. Steelers 4-0 up on the Flyers. Clan 2-0 with the Storm. Panthers 2, Flames 1, all end of the second period in the Elite League. For me, in this one, I think the question of consistency has to go out the window, because if this was a league game, you wouldn't get bet against Billingham. For me, I do think the Stars take it, because I think you've got Ian Brown on full form. Like I say, 56 goals in 20-something games. He's an absolute machine. Do Blackburn have the method to shut him down? Because if they do, then it could be a very, very different conversation. But there's also the other depth of scoring for the Stars. Grittans, Elder, Sykes, Moss, Greenhound, Dowdle. It's going to be a tough one for Blackburn. And yes, they've got goal scorers of their own, but do they have the amount of goal scorers and the depth to do it? I hope it's a close one. It should be interesting. I'm still picking Billingham just to nick this one. There's the league table in Division 1 North as well, and we can see everybody 1 to 6 is qualified for the playoffs. The Nottingham Lions mathematically could join them this weekend, depending on the results elsewhere. Leeds Knights on the inside looking out. The Wild have played a game less, but they are 6 points back. Into South 1 then, and revenge for Alex Murray and the Solent Devils as they head towards the cup final this weekend. Losing in Cardiff Bay last Sunday, they come back home to Gosport on Saturday and give the Cardiff Fire a receipt of note. 10-1 Alex Murray's team win over the Cardiff Fire in this one, and good for keeping pace and keeping position in the league table as we head towards playoffs. Aaron Reagan with the lone goal for the Fire. 2 goals in this one from Alex Murray, 2 from Charlie Wedge, who is having a superb year, it should be said. And then goals for Ollie Cackett, Cam Buckle, Harry Cloutman, Harry Harkup, Tom Banner, and Aston Lacey for the Devils. And then a huge one, title implications with this one, given the top 3, but a huge win for the Slough Jets over the Chelmsford Chieftains, 6 goals to 2. The Jets put themselves into a 3-0 lead thanks to Dylan Hilliker, Seb Moore, and Ben Ely Newman. Sacha Maltsev then got the Chieftains on the board, but it wasn't enough. Juha Lindgren and Carl Bradburn made it 5-1. Grant Bartlett gave them a tiny bit of hope at 5-2, but just over. Just a few seconds later, 13 seconds later, in fact, Ollie Hemmings-Mayer making it 6-2 and ending the game as a contest error. A massive 3 points for Lucas Smithill's side. A lack of game sheet between the MK Thunder and the Swindon Wildcats. It is a game I believe the Swindon Wildcats won, which we're just going to very, very quickly see if we can pull up the thing. Is they've not sent the game sheet. The Thunder have not put the game sheet through to the to do anything with. So we will quickly scoot back. And yes, the Cats won by a score of 5-3. Yes, so if Swindon won that one by 5 goals to 3. So we will keep you. Will hopefully at some stage the game sheet will make its way to Joe, and then people will be able to actually figure out what was happening in that one. Yeah, we did 5-3. Thanks, Sagala. Always appreciated on that front as we skip down. Elsewhere on Sunday, another big defeat for the Oxford City Stars. They travelled down to Gillingham, and it was a comfortable one for Invicta, 10-4, as the Dynamos look to be bearing down again on a playoff encounter with the Solent Devils. Goals in this one for the City Stars coming from Joe Covey, Jake Williams, Sam Robertson, and Ellis Austin. For the Dynamos, a 4-goal night. A 6-point evening for Aaron Connolly, a 6-point night as well from Tom Saw. He was 1+5. Other goals in this one coming from Louis Colvin, Cameron Pywell, Louis White with what I believe is his first goal since joining the. If I'm correct, his first goal since joining the Dynamos, and another goal for Mads Toon. And then this one with a ridiculous shot count. You're not going to believe this one. The scoreline, pretty impressive, 4-2. All things considered, is a pretty respectable scoreline against Slough. They are one of the best teams in the league. In fact, Swindon 2-0 up after 22 minutes and 4 seconds, thanks to Ian Costal Sr. and Ethan Taylor, before Kyle Bradburn, Brandon Miles, Jack Goodchild and Seb Moore turned on the Jets and put this one out of sight. But as we scroll down, you will see the shot count here. Ben Clark-Leach with 60 saves on 64 shots. Nick Gregory faced 5. He faced 5 shots. Not one for the stats count on that front, but because those are insane numbers, all things considered. Bizarre, utterly bizarre. Not a great night, not a night for the shooting stats for Swindon. What a good night in terms of the stats Ben Clark-Leach. A fantastic performance from him. Cardiff recovered from their shellacking from the Solent Devils by beating the MK Thunder 5-0 in Cardiff Bay. Will Thurber, Lewis Stevens, Ewan Davis, James Matthews and Carter Lloyd putting pay to the Thunder and keeping the Fire on course for that 8th and final playoff spot. And then on the high road, well, they needed a win given everything that had happened with Slough, and the Streatham Red Hawks were at one point in a bit of trouble. A goal up and then 2-1 down, heading into the third period against the Romford Buccaneers, thanks to Nathan Williams and Elliot Dervish. And then they turned it on in the final period. Ryan Watt, 2 goals from Danny Inglesby and 1 from JJ Pitchley, meaning that the Red Hawks ran out 5-2 winners. It should be said, when I left Slough on Sunday evening, having commentated on the game, the Red Hawks were 2-1 down. For anybody who knows the distance, I drove to Fleet Services. By the time I hit Fleet Services, the Red Hawks were 5-2 up, which is just the nature of how ridiculous they are as a team. As you can see there, Brett Shepherd in net for the Red Hawks, Sonny Phillips making 45 saves in the end on that one. Not much in the way of league action this coming weekend, although the Streatham Red Hawks will get a game back on the Slough Jets as they take on the Cardiff Fire on the high road on Saturday afternoon, and then 6:45 in Cardiff Bay. Massive one in terms of that eighth and last playoff spot as the Cardiff Fire face the Oxford City Stars. The cup final then sees Solent take on Chelmsford. They will meet 5 p.m. this coming Saturday down at Gosport before returning to the Riverside in Chelmsford at 6 p.m. on Sunday. This one for me depends massively on how close Solent are at coming the end of Saturday evening, because ultimately we know the Chieftains can come back. So yeah, you don't need to have that conversation with anybody, least of all with Streatham. But I think if